Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video, I'm going to take a look at the Intel ARC B580. Now, this graphics card's been on the market for a little while. It actually came out in December 2024, and actually I've had this one since approximately January. I think I got it in one of the sales it was on, maybe even at the end of Christmas, and I haven't really used it. So I figured it's about time that I actually put it into a system and put it through its paces. Being that there's a lot of conversation at the moment, both in our Discord and also on the internet in general, about what graphics card should you buy for around about £250. Now, this one actually retails at the moment here in the UK, and this is June 2025, for £259 from overclockers.co.uk, and I think that's actually where I picked this one up from. Whether or not it's a good value proposition at the moment is very debatable. Now, we could talk about specs and run through all that. Essentially, this is a 12GB card. It is PCIe Gen4 X, and it does appear to have somewhat of an overhead in the driver. So if you are rocking a slightly older system on PCIe Gen 3 or Gen 4, or a lower end processor or an older processor, then potentially this may struggle a little bit, which is one of the key reasons why people are a little bit hesitant, I think, about picking up one of these graphics cards. Now, I've actually been testing this on my system today, which is actually using an Intel Z890 chipset, and also is using a Core Ultra 200 series 245K, so a pretty modern CPU. This also has a TDP, allegedly, of 190 watts. Now, for some bizarre reason, even in my testing today, I've never really managed to get it much above around about 100, 120. So this is effectively running a very similar kind of wattage to something like the older Radeon RX 6600 8GB cards. And actually they do pretty well and are a relatively decent budget pickup for somewhere under the £200 mark. So is it actually worth getting an Intel ARC B580 in 2025 or beyond if you're looking at spending around about £250? Now, there are actually quite a few options available at that sort of price point. We've got the Radeon RX 7600 at around about 240. We've also got the older RTX 3060 12GB for around about the same price, about £240 here in the UK. You've also got the newer RTX 5060 8GB at around about 260, and the RTX 4060 Storm X for around about the same sort of price, 260 in the UK. And if you want to spend a little bit more, you've got the RX 9060 XT, which is just freshly out, for around about £270. So basically kind of bang on the same price as this. So there's a lot of graphics cards to choose from, and they've all got their pros and cons. I think the biggest con with this one is the fact that you have got that PCIe Gen 4 x8 bus. So for older systems, and again with that driver overhead, it can be challenging to get the best out of this particular GPU. So clearly there are some dilemmas to be considered. So with all that aside, let's take a look at the actual card itself. The packaging is absolutely excellent. Intel themselves have done a fantastic job on this. Partner cards obviously do have different variants, such as 3-fan models, etc. Although this one, with its dual fan design, I think they've really nailed the design. Looking at the card, it has got a very, very nice look to it. The dual fans on here, absolutely excellent. It runs extremely cool and quiet, getting no more than around about 70 degrees maximum, and the fans seem to top out around about 1300, 1400 RPM, and it's basically silent in my system. So I've got no qualms in terms of its cooling performance and also its noise levels. Something else which is actually quite beneficial due to that lower TDP is the fact you've only got a single PCI Express 8-pin power connection. So that is pretty useful again for those of you with slightly smaller power supplies or not with the budget to have a nice beefy PCI Express slot. Then yeah, this is a pretty good option. Also, when it comes to display outputs, you've got 4 display outputs. You've got HDMI, just one of those, and 3 display ports. So plenty of options for driving multiple monitors. So if you just want to use this in some kind of productivity system, then it's going to be fine for that with multiple monitor support. And actually, surprisingly, does very well in things like Adobe Premiere and also Photoshop. So again, if those are concerns, then for productivity or kind of real work tasks, it's actually not too bad a shout. Anyway, as usual, I'm whittering on a little bit now, so let's take a look at some performance benchmarks. I've actually done some benchmarks today. All of the benchmarks in today's video will be running at 1440p. I think that really is what we should be looking towards. Obviously, if it'll run 1440p, it'll do 1080p much easier. And also when it comes to settings, I've set all of the games to around about medium or high, and also a little splattering of ray tracing involved as well. So with all that said, I think it's time to go and look at the benchmarks. So first of all, take a look at some of the synthetic benchmarks. So the first one we've got here is going to be the Steel Nomad. And the Steel Nomad, at the end of it, we get a score of 3,039 points, which is about what we should be seeing for this particular card. Next up, another synthetic. So this is the Solar Bay. And at the end of this, we get a score of 7,900 points. Next up, we've got Firestrike, and this gives us a score of 14,548 points for the graphics score. And I thought, being that this card actually supports the Intel XeSS, I thought it would be a good idea to run a test on that. So you can see here, and actually in the test, it's actually quite good. You can see we're getting around about 130% improvement in performance. Obviously that is with some kind of frame generation type shenanigans going on. But obviously if you're running a game which does need that extra boost, potentially it's there. Now of course you can use other technologies with this card, such as the AMD FSR, etc., and potentially other scaling technologies. So now let's take a look at some actual gameplay. So first of all, we're going to be doing CS2. Now this is running with the medium preset. And we don't have any FFX or FXR or any of that stuff. This is just native resolution. It actually runs pretty decently. We're getting averages of around about the sort of 250 FPS. Although something which I do notice with this graphics card, and it does seem to be a regular occurrence, is you do get massive swings in performance. So sometimes you could be running a happy 250 FPS, other times you could be looking at around about 100. So you get really big swings and dips. And also, if you look at the actual graph there, you can see there is the occasional spike. And I'm not entirely sure what is causing it, whether it's the game engine, whether it's the graphics card. It does appear to be something to do with the graphics card. I am seeing this in numerous games, which is a little bit disappointing. But anyway, if you want to play CS2 at 1440p at medium settings without any frame scaling or frame generation stuff, then I think this is actually not too bad at all, especially for the given price. Next up, we'll take a look at Cyberpunk 2077. Now with this, we'll be using it with the ray tracing medium preset, and with this we're getting somewhere in the region of about 70 FPS. Now my gameplay isn't particularly spectacular here, but it actually seems to be running quite nicely. Again, every now and then we do get those frame spikes or frame jumps, which is a little bit off-putting, and potentially for some people could be somewhat nauseating. If we actually take a look at the synthetic benchmark in Cyberpunk, you can see it actually runs quite nicely, and it does appear to be somewhat more consistent. Now some people have said that potentially Intel have optimized their drivers for benchmarking. This is somewhat evident in a lot of the actual synthetic tests, as you see it using more wattage, more TDP, whereas in traditional gameplay, most games seem to be hovering around that 100 to 120 watts, rather than being at the TDP maximum, which is 190. Now don't get me wrong, it's great to see a graphics card being more efficient, but it just makes me wonder if there's something holding this back. Next up, something else which I regularly play. This is Robocop Rogue City. Now this also is running at the medium preset, and with this we're averaging in around about 70 FPS in general, but again it's the same story. The frame rates are very changeable, and also there is that occasional lag spike, which again I don't know where it's coming from. It is quite annoying, and again potentially for some people could make you feel a little bit nauseous. Next, something a little bit older, so this is Reckfest, again one of those titles that I play quite frequently. Now Reckfest being a slightly older title, I thought it would be best to run this with the high preset. Again, this is at 1440p, and generally we're getting somewhere around the 150 frames per second. Now again, this is one of those particular titles where depending on which map you're on, what sort of terrain, etc., then you can get very changeable frames per second. But we are looking around about 150 FPS, which is very, very playable indeed, and Reckfest runs very nicely. So if Reckfest is one of your titles that you play most frequently, then you're going to be very pleased with the results of this. Now where it gets a little bit different is now if we take a look at Reckfest 2. Now this is the same, so we're running at 1440p. This is with the high settings also, but we are seeing a big drop here. So the Reckfest 2 engine seems to be considerably more demanding. It isn't a particularly well optimized title yet because it still is in its kind of beta phase. But with this, we're looking at an average of around about 60 FPS. Again, we are getting those lag spikes, and also we're getting big inconsistency with the actual pacing of the frames and also the frame rate. Now actually when I was playing this, it was actually very nauseating. I did actually have to stop doing the benchmarking and recording and actually walk away from the computer for a little bit because I was feeling genuinely nauseous, which is not great, and it isn't something which I found on a graphics card in a very, very long time. Now actually after doing this, I did come back and try it 1080p, and it wasn't a great deal better. So whether or not this is due to the actual game engine itself, or whether it's an inherent problem with the graphics card, I couldn't tell you. I'm hoping as time goes on, Reckfest 2 improves and gets a bit smoother. I did find it a little bit nauseating with a Nvidia graphics card as well at some points, depending on the resolutions. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily wholly an Intel problem, but certainly is something to be wary of if Reckfest 2 is one of those titles that you aspire to. Now changing gears completely, looking at Fortnite, so this is the latest version of Fortnite. We're running this with the medium preset with XESS set to the balanced preset or profile. And this is actually great. This is running pretty much all the time at 170 FPS. It would appear that Intel have put a lot of time and effort into this title to make it very smooth, being it is one of the kind of the firm favorites, especially for the esports crowd and for basically the PC market in general. Fortnite still has thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of consistent players all the time. So again, this runs really nicely. It isn't quite as smooth as some of the times I've played with Nvidia cards. I must say that there is still work to be done as far as the Intel drivers go, but still 170 FPS on average at 1440p, medium preset. I think this is actually pretty decent and it was very enjoyable. Next up, Dead Island 2, again another one of those titles that I play quite frequently. Now again, this is one of those games where depending where you are, the frame rate can be all over the place anyway. This also suffered from what I think is something to do with the shaders compiling in the background. It does seem with a lot of these titles, the longer you play them, the smoother it gets. And that isn't, again, just an Intel thing. We do find that with other graphics cards as well. Although it has made me consider that the Intel driver, especially the latest one, does appear to take a lot longer for the textures and the shaders to all kind of pre-cache themselves and to get a more consistent time. This took about 15 minutes to get to a point where it was consistently smooth. Again, there was the occasional lag spikes, which again seemed to be a regular occurrence. But overall, 160 FPS for a title like this is pretty good. I quite enjoyed it, especially when it settled down. Also, we've got a slightly older title. This is Far Cry 6. This is running at the high preset without RT on. It was very basic RT in this anyway, so I decided to leave it off. It still looks really nice. This, we're looking around about 120 FPS when we're kind of just moseying around. There is a lot of textures going on here, a lot of detail. When you look up at the sky or anything going on, or slightly smaller areas, you can get up to 160, 170 FPS, which is very similar to what we were seeing in both Dead Island 2 and also Fortnite. Runs really well, and if we look at the actual Far Cry benchmark and follow that through, again you can see it's pretty smooth, but again this is one of those things where the game is running on rails. There's very little to actually get in the way, and we are seeing those little frame spikes periodically. It does seem to be a consistent thing. Whether or not it's my system, whether or not it's just the Intel drivers that are out at the moment, I honestly couldn't tell you. And if you are actually an Intel ARC A770 or B580 owner, and you have these titles and you have the latest drivers, please do let me know in the comments section how yours is faring, because this just feels a little bit wrong to me. So there we go, there is a look at the Intel ARC B580 graphics card. I am very much in mixed mind with this. I actually find this to be arguably worse than the A770 which come before it, which was slightly more expensive, but you'd think that being this is kind of effectively the replacement for it in its price point, that this should be doing better, I think personally. And also, if you look at other older graphics cards, and this is not really just anything isolated to Intel, both AMD and Nvidia are struggling with this at the moment, especially on the kind of the more budget orientated cards. When you can pick up something like the old RTX 3060 Ti, which in general is going to be faster than this card. Yes, we do only have 8 gigs of VRAM, but again, if you're looking at 1080p, 1440p with slightly older games, or you're happy to put down to either medium or high presets, then the 3060 Ti is probably still a good shout, and you can pick those up for somewhere in the region of about 120 to 160 pounds. So around about £100 saving at least, and better performance, arguably less future-proof, but depending on what Intel do in terms of drivers and also sorting out some of the frame pacing issues, potentially the RTX 3060 Ti might be the way to go. Or again, if you just want a graphics card which is just going to slot in and work, maybe go for something like the RTX 4060 or even the 3060 12 gig, which is going to still have that frame buffer and still have a lot of the performance that this has got anyway, but you're likely to pick it up at a much lower price if you're buying it on the used market, or you'll pay exactly the same on the new market. Anyway, I was hoping to be more positive about the B580. It's a nice looking card. Intel are doing a pretty good job in terms of this being their second generation of graphics card. So obviously Intel and AMD have had a lot of experience and have had a lot of time to kind of tune their drivers. It's just a shame they can't do better in terms of pricing at the moment. But if you're looking for around about the £250 mark and you see this around and it's available in stock, then it's certainly worth a look, but I certainly would consider the other options on the market. So there you go, that's my thoughts on the Intel B580. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, smash the like button. If you want to see more content like this on a daily basis, maybe consider hitting subscribe and also that chime notification. That way you'll be notified of future video releases. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.